Good afternoon. My name is Barbara Johnson, and I serve as chair of the Board of Governors of the Joint Center for Political and Economic Studies. Thank you all for joining us for the presentation of the Lewis E. Martin Great American Award. The Joint Center was founded in 1970 to advance the political and economic well-being of Black Americans. As America's Black think tank, the Joint Center provides compelling and actionable policy solutions to eradicate persistent and evolving barriers to the full freedom of Black people in America. The Joint Center launched the Lewis E. Martin Award in 2003. The award is named in honor of one of the founders of the Joint Center and recognizes individuals who have made transformational contributions that further the promise of America as a land of hope and opportunity for all. Past awardees include Senator Kamala Harris and Cory Booker, Presidents Bill Clinton and Jimmy Carter, Ambassador Susan Rice, Congressman John Lewis, Dorothy Height, James Clyburn, and Muhammad Ali. Today, we are delighted to add to this list June Montgomery Tabron, CEO of the W.K. Kellogg Foundation. We are presenting this award to honor June's vision and leadership in the philanthropic sector, where she is a powerful voice for racial healing and reconciliation. Under June's leadership, the Kellogg Foundation has shaped philanthropy's response to racial injustice, centering the needs and experiences of Black children and families and other underrepresented communities, and vastly improving millions of lives across the country. June, on behalf of the Board of Governors of the Joint Center for Political and Economic Studies, please accept this Lewis E. Martin Great American Award.
Thank you so much, Barbara. And thank you to the Board of Governors of the Joint Center for Political and Economic Studies. This is truly a tremendous honor, and I am overwhelmed. The actual award is absolutely beautiful. And I just thank you all so much for this honor, and I'm truly overwhelmed by the list of champions who have received this award prior to my receiving it. As you mentioned, former presidents, great leaders of today, like Stacey Abrams and Vice President Kamala Harris, and my beloved, the late Congressman John Lewis. I am just truly overwhelmed and honored by this award. At the Kellogg Foundation, we believe that pursuing racial equity and racial healing is our work because it leads to thriving children, working families, and equitable communities. It's been work that we have pursued for decades and work that I think has defined my life's journey around equity. I joined the foundation in 1987, 35 years ago, and at the time was one of few people of color. And then 27 years later, I became the first African-American woman to lead the Kellogg Foundation. And my leadership has been about the transformation, both of the organization and the transformation of communities, again, through the process of pursuing racial equity and racial healing. We know that when we create spaces for people to come together, to learn, to be with one another, to come together and create a community that respects every person, we can transform places that really support children and families to thrive. So I look forward to this continued work. We all know that this work is not easy, but it's a journey that we all have taken together, both you and your organization and the W.K. Kellogg Foundation, and work that we will continue because we know it's the right work for children and families. So thank you. I am honored for this acknowledgement, and I look forward to our future journey together.
Well, June, just as the president of the Joint Center, and more importantly, as a fellow native Detroiter, let me be the first to offer my congratulations to you just on receiving the Joint Center's highest award. And also just to thank you and your team at W.K. Kellogg for your leadership in advancing a more just and equitable society for all Americans and also for Black communities and for Black children. The Joint Center and the W.K. Kellogg Foundation, we share a bold vision for the future, but we also understand that as a nation, we face serious challenges on the road to racial understanding. And we appreciate your willingness to chat a little bit today about some of these issues, about some of your work and about some of these issues. So let me shift in terms of my first question with June. And the W.K. Kellogg Foundation has done a lot of work on truth, racial healing, and transformation. Now, could you tell us what that is? Those are kind of some big, lofty words here. What does this mean? How are these concepts connected to community transformation?
Thank you, Spencer. I think it's important to define these terms, just as you've asked, because I think as people understand the definition, they can see themselves in the definition. Our definition of racial equity is a definition that speaks about every person being able to achieve and pursue their desires regardless of their skin color, regardless of their race or ethnicity. Everyone seeing that they have opportunities to thrive. It's a very expansive definition. It is about everyone seeing themselves and seeing a pathway toward opportunities. Our definition for racial healing is about how we restore our humanity, how we bring people back to wholeness, the relationships that we build, the trust that we build in communities. And the process of healing, the journey of walking with someone else and understanding who they are and seeing them in their common humanity is what we believe is the process to get to racial equity.
So now, appreciate that overview, and let me follow up on that. Could you tell us how racial healing results in just tangible policy change in government and also in the private sector that improves the lives of Black communities in tangible ways? Like, I could imagine there might be some opponents of teaching racial history who would say that teaching history obstructs racial healing because it results in guilt among, white children. That's something we may have seen in the newspaper. There are some Black folks, who might say, hey, we want equity, we want economic justice, healing. I don't know how realistic that is here, So give us a little bit more about what this means to, different segments of our society.
Sure. And, to your point, Spencer, narrative is so important for all of this work. And when we think about our work in racial healing, we also know that it's part of that journey is about storytelling and validating everyone's stories and allowing everyone to be seen in history. So it's about it's about improving that narrative and making sure that we all have a common understanding of how we all show up in history. It is not about blaming or shaming. is truly about getting to our common humanity. And when you think about how does it work then, and many people ask that question, and I'm glad you've asked, because sometimes they think about healing as just, I would say, soft work, right?
Right.
Work that is conversation that leads nowhere. And in our work, as we've been supporting the efforts around communities all over the nation, the way we define our work is it's about truth, racial healing, and transformation. It's our TRHT work, and we definitely called out transformation because we don't want the conversations to just be good conversations. We want to see transformation in communities.
Mhm.
And for example, we made an investment in one of our local communities, Kalamazoo, Michigan. And through the process of healing and conversations and relationship building, the effort led to the community addressing a housing issue in the community. And it was an issue that really stemmed back from housing discrimination from many, many decades ago. But in the current time frame, the community addressed the inequality in their housing policy and how it was contributing to the homelessness. And together through this process, they actually identified and changed housing policy in the city of Kalamazoo in order to be more equitable and to provide opportunities for homeless people to achieve equitable access to support and housing supports. So we saw it actually work. They knew that these policies were not equitable. And through the process of dialogue and engaging people from throughout the community in many different roles, they were able to actually write new policy that allow for more equitable access to housing.
That's a really solid and great example at the local level. You know this much better than I do, but South Africa was really ahead of the United States in terms of reconciliation and truth here, and did some really important work. Yet they continue to have some serious problems that stick with them, right? And so in the US, how do we engage in racial healing in a constructive way that acknowledges the challenges of the past, right? But also invest resources to ensure that the full humanity of Black communities is recognized moving forward.
Yeah, and one of the things we recognized, Spencer, was maybe there is a both and to this work. And we do believe that communities can take the lead. Many policies that affect children and families are local policies. And we wanted to make sure that our communities were taking on the work of their truth and their history. And so many of the efforts were started locally. Just as I spoke about in Kalamazoo, we supported work in Buffalo, New York, tremendous work that looked at returning citizens and whether they were able to access economic opportunities. Again, a local issue. Now, it is our vision that this work will, of course, lead to national policy as well, that these best practices will be documented and the lessons from this work will lead to policy that can be adopted at the national level. And that's why we continue to support this work and organizations like yours that can allow us to amplify the lessons learned and bring this information forward for national policy as well.
And just, as I wrap up, I just think about, I've been reading this, Some of Us by Heather McGhee, and this, kind of outdated concept of if something is good for, let's say, Black communities, it must be bad for other communities, right? And this notion of how do we reconcile and kind of get past that and look at how all of us doing well benefits, all of us in terms of the nation. So we really just appreciate your leadership in terms of just changing that narrative, that old worn out narrative, especially as we move into, a new global economy where it's not just kind of a cheap caste-based labor system that whether it's cotton or something else that allows folks to get forward, but, real human capital and people who, have real opportunities and that kind of widespread opportunity benefiting us all. So thank you so much for the work you and your team are doing at the W.K. Kellogg Foundation, your leadership in terms of philanthropy. And I'm going to hand it back over to the Board of Governors Chair, Barbara Johnson, for a few closing thoughts. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome.
Thank you, June and Spencer, for that inspiring conversation. Several words stand out for me, but one that really stands out is the idea of humanity and our common humanity and the transformation that you, June, are leading at Kellogg's that are going to lead us to that vision of a humanity that is inclusive for all. June, your trailblazing leadership at W.K. Kellogg Foundation has transformed and shaped the philanthropic sector's response to racial equity by centering the needs and experiences of Black children and families and other underrepresented communities. I am truly inspired. Thanks to everyone for your participation today. And congratulations again, June. Have a great afternoon, everyone.